This is a story about addiction, alcoholism, and it's my story. If you have any loved ones or you yourself are dealing with addiction, listen up, because my story is something that might be able to help you. I've never been shy about being an alcoholic. I've always told my story to anybody that would listen, because I feel that that's going to help the community and help people understand what addiction is and how they can overcome it. So this is my true story as I can recall it. I'm sure other people might have a different take on some of the things that I talk about, but this is coming from my personal point of view. So listen up. I've been an alcoholic since I was 17 years old. I had very severe anxiety as a kid. My father passed away at a very young age. I was 14 years old, and I was a lost soul. I didn't know where to turn. I had some really good people in my life, but when you're so young, you don't care about any of that. You literally are just trying to find your place in the world. I had self-esteem issues. We grew up pretty poor in a rich town. So when I was growing up, a lot of things were against me to begin with. And after my father passed away, I just became lost, anxiety filled, and I turned to drinking. I turned to drinking at 17. Most young kids, they start even earlier than that. But it was a great escape. It was this amazing feeling of euphoria where all my problems went away every time I drank, and I didn't have to deal with anything. And that's great for a young kid to just whisk their problems away behind a bottle or beer or any kind of drug. It's tough growing up, and nowadays we don't have the guidance that previous generations have had before. We didn't have two parents growing up in the same household. Does that sound like a lot of you, where you didn't have a mom and a dad both in the same family? Maybe you live with grandparents. But that's how I grew up, and I turned to alcohol from the second that I got drunk for the first time. I was in love, and I chased that pretty much the rest of my adult life. I would constantly, when I was younger, every weekend I was drinking, and by senior year it turned into drinking every single night. Heck, we used to drink before we even went to school. Because we just didn't really want to deal with life. I had to do an extra year of high school because of it. I mean, that's the realization. I didn't really figure that out until later in life, after I dug through all the excuses and everything, but it was because of being an alcoholic at such a young age that, I didn't even graduate high school on time. In fact, I dropped out of school and luckily made the right decision to go back and get my diploma, but a lot of kids, a lot of young people, they don't do that. They drop out and they fall into obscurity and into their addiction. So I ended up graduating high school, still a raging alcoholic, and into the workforce, and had a hard time keeping jobs because of my addiction, having to have alcohol all the time. And I was still partying all the time, and that's actually where I met my kid's mom, is through some friends, and he was my best friend, and it was his sister, and we were all partying, and a couple of years later, I have two kids, and I'm still partying, and I'm still going to work, and I'm thinking that I'm doing everything right. I'm holding down a job, I'm supporting my family, and there's only so much that somebody can take of that. So she, eventually got sick of that. She left me because of basically drinking, way too much drinking. And, she had two little ones to think about. I did too, and I thought I was doing a great job of it. Thought I had everything under control, and, that wasn't red flag number one. That, your person that you spent 7 years with and have two kids with just left you. What do? You go right back to the bottle, the drugs, or whatever. My life is shit. I don't have anything going for me. I might as well just, party it up and drink more. And I spent a couple years just sitting there drinking alone. I had to move in with my mom because I didn't have any place to go, and I was spending all my money on alcohol, and I lost my house, I lost my kids, I lost my family. Still wasn't enough. I ended up spending 3 years with my mom, and it got even worse. I was drinking twice as much as I did before, and lost a couple jobs in the process, and it was a very excruciatingly painful time for me, because this is the time when I kind of realized that, yeah, I probably do have a problem, but I'm functional, I'm going to work, even though I was losing jobs from calling off from hangovers and things like that, but yeah, I was still receiving a paycheck pretty steadily. I wasn't out of work for too long, and I just kept making excuses, and I was seeing my kids real regular, but I was drinking through all of that and making stupid decisions, and I didn't have any money to better my situation. So fast forward a little bit, after this 3 years, I met my now wife, my beautiful wife, whom I love and cherish if you're watching this. She and I hit it off immediately. We met on Facebook. We're old school. We went to school together, so we ended up, hitting it off real fast, and one of those relationships where you just know that everything is right. And at this point, I confessed that I love my beer and I love to drink, and if she had a problem with that, then we shouldn't go any further. And she had battled some of her own problems in her past, and at this point I was, I think, 29 or 30, and we knew what we wanted out of life and what we were accepted of, but I don't think she really knew, well, I know she didn't really know how deep of an alcoholic I was. But I had purpose at this point. I had this beautiful new woman in my life. I really wanted to switch things up, and I wanted to change things, but I knew I had a problem, but I wasn't really ready yet to say that, yes, I'm an alcoholic and I need to do something about it. Well, fast forward a couple years and a couple kids, and I come home from work one day and I'm just exhausted, and I'm drinking, and these beers that are going down, they're just so bitter, and I'm just so tired. It was like a full-time job. I go to work, I work my full-time job, and then I come home and I had another full-time job of drinking, and it just became too much. So I remember just sitting there thinking how tired I was and how I wanted to stop. And at this point, I have 4 kids, I have a beautiful wife, and you know what? It wasn't any of that. It was because I was tired. I was so unbelievably tired that I didn't want to do it anymore. So I called my wife at work and I told her that I wanted to go to rehab and I wanted to be done with drinking, and that I was tired. I made another phone call to my brother and my sister, in which they immediately came over. I called work the next day to let them know that I was going to be going to rehab and that I wouldn't be coming into work. And at this point, I was resolved to, if I had to lose another job, then I was going to lose another job, but I could not go on with life anymore as status quo, business as usual. I had to make some kind of a change, and I was really willing to sacrifice anything not to be that tired anymore. In the end, it wasn't my beautiful wife, my kids, my family, my health. I was just tired. So I went to rehab, and it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, barring my children being born. They taught me so much about my disease, about alcoholism, and what I was going through. And I was able to safely detox there in a safe environment with physicians monitoring me, and I was able to talk with my peers whom were alcoholics and addicts in an open, friendly environment. At this time, it was, it's still taboo, but it was, taboo that you just did not talk about your problems, and you only talked about it to your loved ones, which probably already knew, but there was no open platform or forum to talk about addiction and alcoholism. And I got to do that with a bunch of people who were dealing with the same things that I was dealing with being an alcoholic. And I learned so much about how alcoholism affects your brain and your decision making and the inability to actually make the choice to quit drinking. This video isn't going into depth about all of that. It's just what helped me remain sober. And I spent 18 days in Glen Bay in Ohio. It's close to where I live. It's arguably one of the best rehab facilities in the country. And they really showed me how to remain sober and how to watch for pitfalls and things like that. And I spent 18 days there, and after I got out, I was determined to do 90 days of meetings of AA. So 90 meetings in 90 days. I went every single day. I did substitute out one day of rehab for church. That was the agreement that I made with my wife and my counselor, because that's part of the program. Not going to church, but you would understand it a little bit more if you did any kind of research into the 12 steps and things like that. But I decided that I was going to sub out one day of rehab, of AA meetings for church, and I did my 90 meetings in 90 days. And after that, I cut back because I wanted to live life, and I wanted to go on with my life, and I didn't want my life to be all about alcohol, about my disease. But I still knew that I needed work to be done, so I was still going, 3 or 4 times a week for a couple weeks after that, and then a couple weeks later I was down to once a week. By about month 5 or 6 of being sober, I stopped going to AA pretty much altogether. And it wasn't a tough decision for me. It wasn't something that I needed to remain sober. I still talk to my my sponsor, and I don't have those cravings that most people have, and I'm very lucky and fortunate for that. But I wanted to go on living, and I didn't want to live in the shadow of alcoholism. And I made the decision again with my wife, and at any time that I felt like I was backsliding and I was facing temptation, I would immediately talk to my wife, and we would make a decision at that point. Do I need to go back to AA? What do I need to do? And I still have those conversations today with my wife. I'm currently over 3 years sober. I've never had any relapses at all. I've never found myself in the front of a Quickie Mart or a gas station just staring at the beer cooler. I do get tempted from time to time. Right now it's almost 4th of July. It's a real nice hot day, and barbecues, and that goes great. Everything goes great with alcohol. So, I still get that temptation, but I take everything day to day, and sometimes even hour by hour. That's a kind of a quick synopsis of my personal story, but I felt it really important to get that out and put it in some kind of forum so other people can see. And I really hope that it helps somebody. I'm a nobody. I'm not rich. I don't have a lot of influence in the town or community. I'm nothing like that. And that's what most people are when they're dealing with addiction. And I wanted to get it out there and say that yes, you can overcome your addiction. You can win. You can be sober. You have to find your reason. You have to find why you don't want to drink or use anymore. And it has to be more powerful than to continue to use or drink, or that's what you're going to do. You're going to continue to use and drink. It wasn't my wife. It wasn't my kids. It wasn't my kid's mom. Those are very powerful emotions, but I didn't do it for them. I did it for myself because I was tired. And I was so tired that motivation was more than my willingness to continue drinking. Once you find that, and once you want that, then you can be successful, and then you can go on. But if you can't find that, and you can't find that real reason to quit, then you can't do it for your kids, your family members, your significant others. You can't do it for that stuff. Because if you fail, then you're going to have resentment towards them. And I didn't want to have resentment towards my family or my kids or any of that kind of stuff. I found a reason, a very powerful reason that worked for me. And I encourage you to find your reason to quit. If you need any help with that, feel free to reach out to me. I'm going to probably start a Facebook group and try to build a community around becoming sober and make it not so taboo to talk about these kind of things. It was almost impossible for me to find help, even though it's out there. Most people don't feel comfortable walking into a room full of strangers and pouring out your story about why you're an addict and all the problems that it causes in your life. But we live in the greatest age of the world right now, where there's the internet and you can hide behind your keyboard and talk about it, get it out, get some help. So I'm looking to start some kind of community and get this kind of message out there in a real experience kind of way, with people that are willing to talk about it with you where you are. If that's something that interests you, let me know. Comment down below. I don't know where I'm going to put this on, Facebook, YouTube, but I hope my story has helped you, and if it has, let me know.